Across the Fence is on fire. Knowing how to properly operate a fire extinguisher is a small action that can have an immense impact in an emergency. Don't pass up the end of today's program, where we show you how a simple anagram can save your life and the lives of your loved ones. Good afternoon, I'm Joleil Whitney. Fire Prevention Week is observed each year during the week of October 9th in commemoration of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. It was Vermont's own Calvin Coolidge who proclaimed Fire Prevention Week a national observance, which makes it the longest-running public health observance in our country. Joining me to talk about this hot topic is Barry Simays, a firefighter, EMT, fire inspector, and fire marshal, all things fire. Simays knows how to keep cool when the heat is on, and he's the fire marshal at the University of Vermont. Welcome.
Great, thank you for having me.
And as I just said, you have a lot of experience working kind of around fire prevention. So it's something that people kind of take for granted when it comes to fire safety.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. Most people, unfortunately, the prevailing attitude may be, this can't happen to me, right? And in fire prevention, in the fire service, in fire prevention more specifically, we place attention onto training and education and exercising so that people are well prepared for the inevitable emergency that they'll have to deal with. But it's very much a complacency attitude that we want to prevent.
So to kind of build on that, in your years as a fire inspector, were a lot of the fires you saw preventable, or is there some extent fires just inevitable?
Yes, unfortunately, yes, they are. And let's of course, removing the fires that were caused by maybe lightning strikes or acts of nature. Most of the fires that I was personally involved in or investigated, they were preventable. The common factor is the human element, right? The involvement of human beings, the presence of human beings, the act or omission. So somebody does something or they forget to do something that leads to a fire being caused. And some common examples are, most fires occur in the homes, okay? And in the home, cooking, heating, smoking, careless disposal of smoking materials, all of those activities involve someone doing something or forgetting to, right? So paying attention while cooking is a very important lesson that we try to convey, especially at the University of Vermont, because we're interested in preventing those cooking fire responses in the kitchen.
And one of the theme, I should say, of Fire Prevention Week this year is smoke alarms make them work for you. So what should viewers know about smoke alarms?
Everybody should have a smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. Yeah, it's not only a code requirement in the state of Vermont, but and in all the communities within the state. It's just good common sense, right? So having and maintaining, testing, and knowing how to respond to smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms in the home, having a working smoke and carbon monoxide alarm on every level of the home, so that if there is smoke at our most vulnerable times when we're sleeping in the middle of the night, that the smoke alarm can pick up that presence of smoke alarm, and then we can react as human beings to that alarm, and then initiate our own evacuation plan and leave the building and call 911 to report the emergency.
Sure, yeah, an important next step after you leave the house.
Very important, yeah.
And we're coming up on daylight savings time, and kind of previous convention was when you change the clocks, change the batteries in your smoke detector. Is that still
That's still valid, absolutely.
Great.
It's a good way to remember to include that regular maintenance piece for smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. Change your clocks, change your batteries. Vacuum out the smoke alarms themselves so that you remove any dust, you remove any presence of spiders or other bugs, cobwebs, things like that might cause an accidental activation of the device.
Yeah, that's a good thing to note. I never thought to vacuum out my smoke alarm. And speaking of that, how often should I replace mine altogether?
Well, so it's very important to read the manufacturer's instructions that come with the piece of paper that everyone always throws out, right? Keep the manufacturer's instructions, read those instructions. Those instructions will specify how long the detector is good for, essentially. And the length of the life of a detector tends to increase over time as technology improves. But each manufacturer has a little different time. There are 10-year long life lithium smoke alarms. There are smoke and carbon monoxide alarms that may be a 7-year lifespan. So it's very important to read the manufacturer's instructions. But it's also important to know that there are some properties, public buildings, large apartment complexes, office buildings, that any individual doesn't necessarily want to go around and start trying to change detectors, right? It's a larger there may be a larger system involved, and that responsibility technically falls to the property owner.
We're going to dive into that a little bit more in a second,
Yeah.
but first I want to ask, if somebody has a sensory or physical disability, are there smoke detectors that can kind of cater to that?
There actually are. And we use these at the university on special occasions, and they're commercially available. There are smoke and carbon monoxide alarms that have a visual component, so they have strobe functions built into them, or you can get a strobe that installs parallel to the smoke alarm. And then there are also add-on devices that maybe they have a tactile function. So there's a motion, so a bed shaker that responds to the smoke alarm when it sounds. That piercing sound will activate the bed shaker. And there's a pad that inserts underneath the mattress, right? So for those that may be deaf or hard of hearing, the strobe function will call their attention during the daytime when they're not sleeping, and then the bed shaker will serve to cause that vibration under the mattress when they're sleeping.
Yeah, so a lot of resources to make
There
those
are.
more accessible.
Yeah.
And now let's jump into a little what you were saying about maybe if you're a renter or you work in an office
Right.
building. So how should you go about, if you're not the landlord, obviously, how
Yeah.
should you go about making those changes?
Communicate with a property owner. If you're an occupant of the building, communicate with the property owner. So in larger public buildings, and even small, physically small buildings, there may be a commercial fire alarm system, right? And that's a very different type of detection and notification system, but it operates under the same principle: detects the presence of smoke and causes an alarm and calls the fire department, right? So there are, in the state of Vermont, there are special requirements for licensed electricians that in order to maintain those systems. So it's very important that if you're working in a building like here, we don't want to be removing devices, testing devices. We want to leave that to the trained professionals, and the property owner is ultimately responsible for that. So it's just a conversation. It's asking the property owner, how is this fire alarm system maintained? Is it tested on a regular basis? The owner should be able to answer all those questions.
And I want to circle back to something that isn't really fire related, but is part of a smoke detector, which is something you mentioned earlier, carbon monoxide. So
Right.
what is that and why is it important to
Right.
keep track of?
Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas, and it's produced anytime there's a combustion process, so a fire, right? And it's produced also anytime a gas range operates in a kitchen, a heating system in a house that heats the whole house, a water heater that might be a gas-fired water heater, and it exists everywhere. And unfortunately, we have incidents in the past here in the state of Vermont locally that have proven to cause injuries and even deaths. So a number of years ago, carbon monoxide alarms were required. I believe it was in the early 2000s. And then so those are required in addition to smoke alarms or smoke detection, photoelectric smoke detection specifically, because again, in the middle of the night, if we have a presence of carbon monoxide in a home, then we want that alarm to pick up that presence. We want it to sound, the alarm to sound, and we want to notify people to evacuate that building and get the fire department on the scene. That's
So
the most
it's the
important
same
piece.
process. Get
Same
out,
process.
yeah.
Call 911, evacuate, have emergency services respond regardless of what community we're in, right?
All right, in just a second, we have to head outside actually for something exciting. But earlier this summer, or past summer, I should say, you provided fire extinguisher training to 4-Hers. And so how can somebody who's maybe not part of 4-H get involved in that?
That's a great question. So at the University of Vermont, between February 1st, usually until the snow flies, for university community members, faculty, staff, and students, we offer fire safety and fire extinguisher training, hands-on extinguisher training, which we'll do in a moment. So that's open to anybody within the University of Vermont system. For anyone else that may be watching here, I'd encourage you to make contact with your local fire department. And many fire departments may offer this training. The Division of Fire Safety through the state of Vermont also has resources in public education to work with the local fire departments to provide this education. But I'd also remind you, as you mentioned before, that Fire Prevention Week is coming up. So many fire departments may have programs within their own communities. I know the city of Burlington is offering an open house, I believe, during Fire Prevention Week. So just check with your local fire department.
Sure. And now's the time.
Yeah, now's the time.
All right, and now we're actually going to head outside where Barry is going to teach us the importance of PASS, or P-A-S-S, and how to properly operate a fire extinguisher. Let's start. What's the P stand for?
All right, so the P stands for pull a pin, and every extinguisher has a pin. So really what you're trying to do is break that tamper seal and pull that pin out. So you can either pull the pin straight out, or if you're having difficulty, twist the pin, break the seal, just get the pin out.
All right, let's see.
There you go.
All right, there we go.
All right, and remove the hose from the clip right there, if you have one. Okay.
All right, and what's A?
A is aim, and that's aim the nozzle and the agent that comes out of it at the base of the fire. In that case, those 4 dots right on the prop right there.
Okay.
Okay. And the first S, when we get some fire here, is squeeze, and you're going to squeeze the handle to start the flow of the agent.
Okay.
The second S is sweep, and that's sweep the agent across the base of the fire until the fire's out.
All right, let's start. Thank you to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX who always make our tapings possible, and thank you to the UVM Emergency Response Team for helping us with this demonstration today.